interchange, the one at 51, and there's the small one with the compress street or whatever up here. Not that that's a major intersection, but that's kind of that northern boundary that connects over to the school and all that. So those are your kind of three very visible main intersections. And you have the 51 one looks to be all within the city limits. The one up on the north side is not in the city limits at all, so you have no control over what happens there. And then the I-55, it looks like just the west side is under your city control, the east side is not. So that's just something to be mindful of. Everything else is okay, but if you're wanting to guide development and have some sort of control over what things look like for your town, you really don't have any control over one of these interchanges for a lot of your tourists and visitors coming off of here, and then you really don't have any control over this little stretch here. But the kick side is people associate that with Como. So whatever is happening around here, I know technically it's not Como, but everybody coming to your town's not familiar is going to consider it Como. So your reputation and those impressions that people have of you, is that all this stuff's included in it. Because we've run into communities before that, well, like, oh, that's the county, that's not us. Well, visitors don't know, they don't really care. This is going to be you. So that's something to be mindful of as far as, any future annexation. There's some things you have to get in mind before that happens, but just to be mindful of that.
Could you go back to that one slide?
Sure.
I've got a question I want to ask. If you don't mind, I'll point it out. Since you're just talking about things outside of control, there's a proposed asphalt pit and gravel mine for right here. And just what would be your opinion of that?
Jeremy, this is a very new thing that's being proposed. An asphalt gravel mining.
Yeah, asphalt plant and gravel pit.
I don't know enough about it to give you really a judgment. That's one of those things that any development out there, one, you don't have control over it, two, you're not getting, if it's some sort of commercial development, you're not getting any tax base off of it either. I know you have something that's pretty far out there with the other gas station and things like that, but I don't know enough about that project specifically to be able to give you really any input on it. But it's one of those things, just to be mindful that these things are right there at that main intersection, and you're not either going to get the benefits from it, but you're also going to get all the negative if it is a negative impression too.
So it's crossing over the south part?
No, it's just on the north.
I mean, okay.
Well, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Oh, but it's just the northeast.
Right.
Okay.
It's a good pasture. It's like, what, 200 acres or something?
It's right across the street from.
So it takes up almost like the whole northeast corner of that quadrant, going north. Yeah.
And if anybody has not signed the petition about that, I'm right.
So there's some things just to keep in mind as far as your entrances and your gateways in your community. You basically have control over 1.5 of the major intersections, so just to think about that. So as we're talking about entrances, I'm going to start kind of on the Highway 51 side, then work over to what I feel like is the major entrance. So this one's going to be Highway 51 coming in from the north. And as you'll see, this presentation is all photographs for the most part. So I'm just going to be putting photographs so you can see your sometimes things look a little different when you put it up on a photograph. You guys drive by it every day, so there's some things that you may not notice anymore just because you're so used to it. Whether it's an abandoned lot, overgrown properties, things like that. Or the good things too. A lot of times, locals, we overlook the things that are great about our communities that really stand out and get outsiders excited about it. So there's some things, and I was kind of describe what we see, and they point out some things along the way. One thing that jumps out just about Como in general is just your rural landscape that you're in, or your rural setting. Something very unique. I mean, I'm from DeSoto County. The wife's from Hernando. I'm from Olive Branch, so we're used to that. A lot of development. I live in Starkville now, which is still a small town, but as far as Mississippi is concerned, it's pretty large. But having that rural landscape is very attractive and something fairly unique. And you have I know this outside St. Louis, but you have which seems to be really random, get really pretty new gas station. Usually you see those at the intersections and all that, but to have that gas station up there, done a fairly good job with the landscape and fairly well maintained, it seems like. You do have some trailer parks, things like that, with no drugs, things like that, that kind of gives you some sort of impression there as you come in. Again, it's more of the rural views. The little cafe, is that a restaurant?
Yeah.
Fried cheeseburger? All right, well, that's good. As to the food list that I'm going to talk about later on, you got a lot of food going on here. It's great. you know, and then as you start to connect into town, some of those intersections and,
James Gas,
yeah. So, and some of the stuff, you know, you think it's litter, but I think a lot of it's cotton too on the side of the road. Some of it looks like litter, but I think it's cotton.
it's litter also.
Some of it, yeah, mixed in with some of it. So some of that stuff. Again, just beautiful scenery around here. I love the old water tanks.
Which one are you talking
We have a few. I love those things, you know.
Even that one over here?
I love them all. Well, Hernando put that in one like that. It's a little, it's not quite rusty, but they put it on the historic register, right? So,
Yeah,
That's terrible.
it has a lot of character. Well, I think, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think they have a lot more character than the newer ones do. Good signage, at least you know where the city limits is. I mean, that's something that it's not a welcome to Como sign, but it's the green invite sign. So at least you know where you are as you're coming in. And as you get closer to this intersection, you know, you just have a lot of asphalt, just kind of the endless driveway there, a lot of potholes.
That's B's quick stop down under R.V. Armstrong, to have great pig feet on the track.
Big feet on practice. I didn't know that part. So, you know, there's some things that have a little bit more definition, getting into the parking lots, things like that. Maybe a little bit of green to break up all the asphalt up, things like that. Great signage for downtown Como, turn left. A lot of communities miss that, so at least you do have some signage to tell people that there is more to Como than just this stretch. And then as you get up to this intersection, and I'll talk about that here in a minute too, but there's just not a lot that grabs your attention and says, hey, I'm in somewhere unique. I need to spend some time here and turn to go see what else is here. A lot of asphalt. If there's some way to clean that corner up, get a little bit more definition to the actual driveways, maybe get a little bit of green in there or something to just break up all that asphalt. You know, a little bit of green there possibly. As you get up here, you start to see a lot of the temporary signs and the grass wasn't maintained, things like that. You'd be amazed. I know sign ordinances, I know that you guys don't have a city planner or something like that that can write ordinances for you, but if you can find somebody that would help with that, writing something that would eliminate temporary signs like that, that's one of the fairly short-term things you can do that really helps clean up town. You'd be amazed at how big of a difference that makes just to eliminate those temporary type signs, because they never last very long. They're always up longer than they should be. They get torn up through the wind and rain and everything else. And it just really gives a cluttered appearance over time. I can circle them for you if you can see. So as you look around that intersection, you know, what is it that's going to make me turn left to go down?
Dollar General. A big yellow sign.
And across the street, you got the car wash that's kind of torn up and not in great condition. So now we're going to jump up, or down actually, jump down to the south end of 51 and come up to that same intersection. So we're going to jump into the outskirts and drive our way in. Again, beautiful landscape, beautiful scenery. Got good signage on the south end as well. As you start to get up, you can see it's a livestock auction, which kind of pays homage to your, and they have a big beef and cattle history, which is great that that's still going on. It's actually pretty, I mean, to be the ag use that it is, it's usually really rough, but it's actually pretty nice looking building and well maintained to be what it is. So. Is that the co-op, I guess? Co-op, you know, great looking building, has a lot of good merchandise, I'm sure we need to go in, but good looking building, fresh paint. Again, same thing with the parking lots there. I know you have a lot of bigger vehicles and things like that, big trailers, I'm sure pulling in and out. So that always adds a challenge, but even these where you already have the little medians, if there's a way to turn those into green space.
If you didn't take a picture across the street west there.
But I have a lot of pictures to try to weed out.
40 or 50 man out there every day that perfectly distracting. Almost good.
Gotcha.
The only thing missing, they should have put a sign up where you tax a lot of work.
I don't think I made it cut. Again, good signage there to turn right, but it takes more than a sign to get people to turn right. You've got to impress them and grab their attention. So taking the sign is definitely one piece of it, but it takes a little more than that. We already talked about this, the car wash that just kind of detracts from the scenes there. But again, you know, what's going to grab my attention? A lot of asphalt over here at the liquor store. So that's something to think about, that intersection. That is one that you do have some control over. As a way to work with property owners, or I know it's a tough battle once it's there, but if there's any way to try to clean that up, get some landscaping there, something to improve the appearance of that intersection.
Hey, Jeremy, I'll interrupt to say, never mind. Anybody need wine? It's opening. In all of our discussions this past year, even about downtown, you know, with parking and where pavement is and where grass is and all that, we end up in the same circle, which is part of, I mean, we're a rural community. To your point, cattle trucks, trailers, people working, you know, and the whole Germantown scape wouldn't work. Sometimes they'd be running over it. But the same conversations with concrete and grass comes up with downtown because, you know, you start defining and curbing and lining and, you know, some of that charm is seeing a cattle truck parked long ways, but it may be killing grass. So just as a point of note as we go through it, that we haven't really decided there's a problem with it, or there is, I don't know.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm not saying landscape, I don't necessarily.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be to fit the scale of Como.
Right.
You know, I'm not trying to make, like you said, Germantown, that's
Right.
not what I'm saying. So, but just some green space to break it up somehow. And that's the balance of meeting the needs of your population, which are very rural, ag-based, things like that. Like you said, the big trucks is part of the culture. But how do you balance that with a little bit more order, a little bit better appearance and things like that? So it is a balance.
How do you control the owners of businesses? And Melvin, I'm not talking about you, John, okay? That park in front of their business.
I'm going to talk about that in the downtown
Okay.
section, so I'll get to that.
Melvin Park's kind of down, so.
So now Oak Avenue, from the west, as we drive, you know, if we do get them to turn off of 51, we have a fairly new, it's got to be fairly new Dollar General, at least it looks like. So it's good to see some new development, especially see, you know, we love the local businesses, but to see some national change shows that there's something going on, have a little bit of market to support that. Again, kind of the temporary signs there. It's, we got a little bit more of the rural characters you come in. Again, either cotton or litter, either way. Very much which one. You have some homes that are, some of them in disrepair, maybe not the best maintained. And then you get up to the Citgo, and you got the Blues marker sign there. So you start to, I'm going to talk about this intersection as well, of how do you get people's attention here, because with your downtown kind of being offset from Oak Avenue, you're not very visible on that corner. The church is, but it's not a real prominent face at that corner. So how do you grab people's attention here, especially when it's not a signalized intersection and things like that, or signaled intersection. So we'll talk about that here in a little while. So now jumping over to 55, which we assumed was the majority of your visitors here. Not a lot of development around the interchange, which is good and a challenge because you want the tax base, but again, it's good because nothing's there now, so you can get control over it and do it in a way that you want it to be done. When it does happen, now you talk about the project that may be happening on this corner, but
And actually, both south sides of that corner, both of them are for sale right now.
for sale. So
Yeah, I mean, all that land is for sale, so.
there's not a lot there. We got a little bit of the sign to the flag. And is that where the sign that's back there used to be over here at this intersection, right? The Como black sign. Okay. I think I remember that.
Actually, on the other side, I think.
Just go left. Now, there's not a lot of just welcome to Como signs. I know that's something that maybe down the list of things to do as far as priorities, but something to announce that you're here, to local businesses to come in. I will say that you have the two mobile home businesses there, usually well-maintained properties. I drive 55 a lot, so I see what's going on there. Having two big companies that sell mobile homes doesn't necessarily say a lot as far as expectations for the income level, I guess, of the residents. So that's as far as a snap judgment as far as you get off the interchange. You're not going to expect a whole lot as you drive down here. You're pleasantly surprised when you do get down here. But those first impressions of having two big companies like that on the corner selling that up, you start to form some opinions as you get off the interchange. But like I said, they're always really well maintained, have a big inventory, and good looking businesses from that standpoint. Again, really well maintained and gives a good presence on the street. You have a Baptist church, gives you a welcome sign there, nothing from the city. 1 mile marker, which is good. I'm going to talk about the end of this section. Maybe the need to have some, so I know Main Street helps and recommends wayfinding signage a lot. And again, that's a good thing about y'all being so compact and small. You don't need 20 of them, but maybe one to get people as soon as they get off 55, because they're going to get off and see there's nothing there. They have to drive a mile, mile and a half. So maybe something just to keep their attention as they're driving so they don't turn around and go back. They have a 1 mile sign, maybe a historic downtown Tupelo, or historic downtown Como, and things like that. Yes?
We had one of the members of our church, the Methodist Church, in fact, Mary Lipson, right in front there, suggested what would it be like to have a Welcome to Como sign that had all the churches on the sign rather than just one. From your standpoint, does that communicate more of a unity, or will you have all the churches that are represented there rather than just separate ones?
It just depends on how it's done. We go to a lot of communities where all the civic groups do the welcome signs. You have a welcome to wherever, and every Kiwanis, Rotary, all those have their little medallion all the way around.
And all their designations like Tree City and
all those. It gets really busy and cluttered and takes away from the message. So, it'd be great. It would show unity that all the churches are working together, but you have to be very careful to do it in a way where it's not just cluttered and overdone. Because when everybody wants to get their name on there, it gets a little bit too much. And your message is welcome to Como.
Right.
It's not necessarily promoting, at least in this case, not promoting the church. You're promoting the city.
Right.
So as long as that message was the central point.
Right.
But once you start getting everybody's name on there, it's tough to do it where it doesn't just get really overwhelming.
I got you.
Especially as people are driving, 45 miles an hour, they only have a second or two to be able to see that sign. And if there's 20 things they're trying to read, it's tough. So as long as you kept that welcome message being the focus,
Gotcha.
I think it'll be fine.
Population 1,300.
Plus or minus one.
Several years ago, there used to be a sign out there that said, "Welcome to Como, not the largest, just the nicest."
And those type of things just speak a lot to visitors that come in, and just to have that. Something other than just a
And Jeremy, on our strategic plan, actually number 2 after sidewalks was some kind of highway sign, and an anchor of some kind.
Yeah. And I don't know where that falls in priority because there's a lot of things you're trying to do there.
Number 2 out of 2,000.
Probably more important. But as you drive this stretch, it is a really impressive stretch from 55 to downtown. You have the beautiful large homes, speaks to kind of the history that was here. Really, really beautiful scenery as you come down, and it actually reminds me of a place in another town. In Greenwood, I've seen the Grand Boulevard in Greenwood, all the nice older homes there. I would love this. I know that would be extremely expensive and extremely long term, but I don't think you need the 4 lanes coming in and out of there. So if there was a way to Boulevard, at least maybe as you got closer to downtown, and get the median in there would make a huge visual presence. And because you don't need the 4 lanes, especially on the bottlenecks down here anyway. But just the homes and just that long straight road remind me a lot of Greenwood. And that's how they've treated the big trees and the median and the light poles and things like that. And as you get up to the downtown area, again, you don't have that big visual presence there on the corner. So how do you get people's attention there? You have a few signs there, it starts to get a lot going on there in the railroad tracks, and there's a lot going on right there that's stuff. But the good thing is, people have to slow down. It's not a signal, but they have to slow down at the railroad tracks to get over them. So you have a little bit of pause to get their attention. So as far as just a summary of the entrance section, again, it's very manageable. You only have 3 corridors to deal with, one major one with Oak Avenue, and it's in really good shape as it is. And then the 4 intersections, the fourth one being the one at Main Street. Trying to get people's attention at all the intersections. Again, the mobile home thing, not the businesses themselves, but you start to form some snap judgments about the overall community, bigger presence and all that. So I already kind of talked about all that. And this is going to be tough, the guiding future development, with you not really having the resources for a planner and somebody to write ordinances and the zoning and all that. being a smaller town, it's really tough, but you can learn from other communities that are much further down the road as far as development goes. They've already seen a lot of growth over the years. Even small towns have a lot more commercial development than you guys have. And they're trying to go back and fix it. You can already see how hard it is at the 51 intersection. Now that something's there, it's very difficult to do anything about it. So if there's some way to get some things in place, whether it's ordinances or guidelines or something like that, so that when development does happen, it does in a way that you're happy with it. And that's going to be a challenge, but that's something that I wanted to point out would be important to get control of it before it happens. And then again, the signage along Oak Avenue just to get people's attention and keep them coming for that mile and a half.
Jeremy, can I interrupt again? Meg mentioned last year, I want to say, there was some grant money we looked at that was to put in sort of, Meg, what was it like, just some design guidelines, just some very basic design guidelines. Like you're saying, like the sign height, or that, you know, I wish Dollar General had at least been required to put their sign, you know, do we need the truck stop sign coming by there?
But you have to first be a local historic district in order to be able to designate signage ordinances.
Okay.
And that corridor needs to be so protected from I-55.
Right.
And the town did not let us put that in the local historic survey, but that was almost 8 years ago. But even with that, commercial industries can still come in on that beautiful rural space, but the signage can be controlled in the facades. But that's only through one organization. I don't know about zoning ordinances through the town.
And there's a few different angles you can come at. I mean, the historic side's one, just through the city's another.
Because to your point, I mean, you got 4 or 5 acres on the south side for sale right now. And I don't know if you said the west side, Sledge, does the west side fall within the city limits? Or
Which one is that?
is the west side fall within the city limits?
No.
So where,
I don't think so. Oh, the west side? I thought you meant the west property. I'm
oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry, no, the west side. But we wondered, you know, how far out in front of this can you get? I mean, tomorrow we could find out a Cracker Barrel's going there and, you know, do any of us have any control over a gravel pit or a Cracker Barrel new sign?
Well, that's the thing. Once you find out it's coming, it's too late. So
I know, and right now, Como has the advantage of not having it here yet, so.
Well, that's part of the problem is we deal with a lot of small towns and they don't see the need to do sign ordinances and things like that because they don't have anything. But they don't realize that if they wait until it comes, it's too late to get it in place. So you may get it in place and not have anybody interested for 5 years, 10 years, but at least it's in place.
The best town in Mississippi is Madison, Mississippi. Mary Hawkins, that male, has stuck to her guns to keep that town.
You've been there many times.
Yeah. Well, Hernando's done a decent job of that too, for being a small town, especially compared to the rest of DeSoto County. They put things in place when they were a small town.
That was 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years ago, there were 2,000 people, 2,500 people. So,
Let me ask a question. You've been in a lot of towns. This town has had people approach it, you know, for businesses. When I'm talking about business, I'm not talking about something small like a restaurant. And I know we're talking about the gravel pit now, but we had a builder that was going to build just before you get to the interstate on the north side. The reputable builder has 2 great projects under that in Atlanta and Nashville. They're doing great. Had another gentleman from the mill down south of here off of the water tower. When we have people like that coming in, before anything happens, everybody jumps on a petition and we never look at what would it be on the positive side. I know there's always a negative side. This town has been stagnant for probably 50 years where they really don't want any changes. And so we jump on petitions and we tar and feather and run like a town before we ever see what the positive aspect of that business might be.
well, I think a lot of that has to do with not having anything in place as far as guidelines or whatever, because you're scared of what it's going to be. It may be great, it may be terrible as far as how it's going to be.
They know both sides.
They need to know both sides.
You can make a logical,
No, I agree.
decision.
But I think that fear is what drives a lot of it. And we see that in a lot of towns that it's that fear of the unknown. So if you did have some things in place that most people agreed on, I think people would accept growth a lot more because they're comfortable with what's gonna,
You got control over it.
you have some control over it.
Let me put this out there, okay, I'm not gonna say anything else tonight. Okay, you know, for example, I'm thinking that this gravel pit out here, you know, I don't know how many employees, I heard 80 and I heard
It's
whatever.
10.
Anyway, you know, that business right there, I always say most of us come to the north and they get it done. You know, where those people gonna eat lunch, you know? If their bosses come in, where are they gonna stay in one of the bed and breakfast and everything? We're not gonna let them do that because there's a war now to prevent them from doing that.
Well, again, I think that's just that fear of what it's gonna be, what is the impact on the community. And I was working in a small town this past week, down a little bit further south, and I did an input session to get kind of input from the community before we did the design work. And somebody had a great quote that I'm gonna use a lot, because they're a small town, people were tied to that place, and you know, that little Mayberry sense to it, and they didn't want to lose that. So any kind of commercial development, they're really fearful of that. They said that they want progress but not change, or they want to progress but not change. I thought that was a great way to put it, because you want to grow, you don't want to dry up and shrivel up and die like I was talking about. Some of these communities look like it, but you do want to grow and be more successful and get more business and all that, but you don't want to lose what's unique about this place. And I think that's where people are kind of stuck. It's like, okay, do we fight it? Do we let it come in? Whatever. They just don't want to change what's unique about Como or whatever the city is. So that's where I think that it's just that fear that drives
And
it.
is that good or bad?
I think it's inevitable.
Well, I think it says a lot that you're that passionate about your place that you want to save it. But again, you do have to don't just jump on and fight everything that comes to town before you really know the full story.
How do we ever get out of $500,000 in debt if you don't grow your tax base and your income? So, you know, there's no visible future where you see yourself ever getting out of debt.
That's one of those things. Some people, jobs is the most important thing. Some people, tax base is the most important thing. Some people, it's something else. So you got to find that in there, and that's just something that all towns have to go through. So there's the wayfinding signs that we're trying to do in Starkville. We're working on for 2 years now. But just an idea to get people's attention to keep pushing them down. Here's that Oak Avenue and Main Street intersection. This is an aerial view. So just to talk real quickly, just off the top of my head, ideas. First things I saw as a designer, some things that could be done possibly. You have a lot of excess asphalt, at least at that area. So maybe you could recapture a little bit of that space on the corners, because you have that big sweeping turn there. So maybe there's a way to tighten up that corner a little bit, get a little more green space, tighten up that corner so it is more of a true intersection. It gives you a little more space to reach out and get people's attention up on the street. You know, as you're leaving downtown, your main access and your view is looking up in that service station's parking lot. So maybe there's a way to work with them to take a little bit of their parking lot, get some green space in there to at least terminate your view at that, as opposed to the service station behind it. You know, you can still have this entrance and exit points here, but at least have you something to terminate that view. And then you can start to work on crosswalks or something at this end may not necessarily be a crosswalk for pedestrians, but some way to get some color, whether it's paint or bricks or whatever it is, just to really start to make all this stand out at that corner. And then you have a lot of other extra space around here. If you make that down to 2 lanes like it is at this end a little bit sooner, start to recapture a little bit of those corners there to really tighten all that up. Again, still going to be drivable, and you still make it.
How's the train go over the grass?
I should put this illustration up.
Can we plant a tree on the railroad track?
So you can see how you can start to tighten that up and get more of a presence on that corner, since you don't really have the buildings on it.
Those like 18-wheelers who come through there don't hear us when we're parked at the library.
Yeah, that's probably another thing too. It gives you a little bit more of a buffer.
Yeah.
So now as we get into the downtown area, watch my time, probably.
It's 20 to 8.
Discussions.
Yeah.
So before I get into the downtown Como, I want to have a base understanding of kind of the measuring stick that we use to create a successful downtown environment. So I'm just going to teach you that you're going to have to work for the university, so you have to learn something for the next few minutes. So bear with me. I'll do my job. But I want to explain to you so you at least have a base understanding of how to make a successful space for people And basically we're talking about why that is more appealing than that. So that seems pretty simple, right? But there's a little bit more to it than just a couple of potted plants. So when I use the term streetscape, I'm basically just talking about that environment. In this case, this is from a pedestrian standpoint. The same things hold true for people as you're driving down the street. The same principles kind of apply. But we're just going to talk about it as a pedestrian right now. So basically, if we're talking about a streetscape and a successful streetscape, there's three parts. The first part are walls. One wall, like on the right side, especially in the downtown area, the buildings kind of create that wall, and literally in the downtown area where all the buildings are connected, they do create a wall. On the left side, a lot of different things can create that experience of the wall. It can be street trees, it can be street lights, parked cars, a lot of different things could create that other wall. The floor, obviously with the sidewalk or the street or whatever it is, and then a ceiling, which in this case, kind of the awnings or the canopies, balconies, the canopy of the trees, all those different type things can create that ceiling. And even heights of buildings can sometimes do that. If they're tall enough, they can create that ceiling. So, if we have three parts, we have walls, floors, and ceilings, what have we created? A room, right? So our goal in creating a successful space is to create an outdoor room using these three parts. And the most important factor, and this is where it comes into, it's not just, oh, it's pretty and all that, it's this human nature things of, people like to have a sense of enclosure. We don't like confined, I don't mean that, but we don't like being exposed out in the open. We want to have that comfortable sense of enclosure, so that's what we're trying to create. Now this photo I showed you earlier, it has a lot of different elements to create that streetscape, right? They have a lot of color on the buildings, business owners will put out the plants and the benches, things like that. The city's done their part with a nice sidewalk, street lights, banners, all those things. There's a lot going on there, and I think a lot of people will spend a lot of time spending their money and time there shopping. Whereas this one, it still has some of those elements, just not as many. So you can see it's not quite as a successful space. And then this one, really only has one of those elements. So you really lose that sense of enclosure. It's just not as and this could be a lot, when the building's gone, it could be a parking lot, where you just lose those walls. So does that make sense? As you see the difference? So that's kind of the measuring stick we're looking at to make sure that all those elements are there, all those parts are there to create that good space. So we're talking about Main Street. You start out at the gas station, which is always busy, it seems like. So it's good. As far as I wish it had more of that historic character to it, it is right in the middle of town. But you have a successful business right there. That'll at least have something there at that intersection that's going on. As you turn down Main Street, you have a big presence of the church. Beautiful church there, big landmark there on the corner, which is great. As you come down to the medians, down the middle, immediately get your attention with the green space. And then you see how big a difference that makes as opposed to what we're talking about on 51. So that little bit of green makes a big difference. And again, this isn't Germantown landscaping. This is something that fits Como, that's green. The city hall and the police station, all that on one side. Very easily identifiable. A little bit of aged sidewalks. I know that's a big priority. And that's just a big undertaking for every town, trying to keep up with that. You have a little bit of, there's a way to clean some up. You've got the little temporary curb there that's kind of hanging out in the street. Just a lot of asphalt. We'll talk about that in a little while. We're talking about parking in general, but overall pretty well maintained. You got the library, which I understand is pretty award-winning library, right? A lot of things going on, something to be proud of right there on that corner. And I was encouraged to see the bike. There's only one, but encouraged to see the bike there. So people are riding the bike, which is
My
great.
husband painted that library twice. I was terrorized in memory of my sister.
Oh, wow, great. So that's something to be proud of on the corner. As you go down Main Street, you get the open space by the fire department, and you start to lose that edge. I know that's some of the parking issues of how to formalize some of that. I know that's been I've talked to Main Street Group a lot about that, being a priority, how to come up with some solutions. That kind of first section of buildings there, now are these new? The bricks look new.
They refaced that
Refaced it.
about 6 years ago. That was actually a John Deere implement company.
'Cause that's always confusing, because I figured they were older buildings, but the brick looked new, so.
Do you see this last bay? That actually has the original facade behind it. That was the Fong Brothers grocery store.
Oh, wow.
And to this day, and they've just started tearing out the ceiling, they're gonna start doing the roof in that building, and we're gonna try and get that facade back how it
Oh,
was.
wow.
It's,
Great.
we're trying to find the doors that went there.
Completely gutted the inside of it this
Yeah.
week. There's
Wow.
nothing.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, you
And
know,
in
have a-
older, sorry, Jeremy, in older days, that actually had a higher awning. I mean, it kind of like the steakhouse.
yeah.
It was
Oh, yeah.
high because the windows in the original facade are high, like here.
Wow.
Yeah.
But behind the other brick down there is a metal building, so the brick is a big improvement over what had been there.
Well, that's a good presence to have right there at that end of the street. Great businesses in there. Get a restaurant. I've been catered to by the Mexican restaurant twice now up here. It's delicious food. Got the antique store, which is what, past year or two? 2 years.
So approaching the year.
First of the year. I saw your merchandise out on the sidewalk when I got here today, which is great because it adds some.
Looks like Samson's from.
No, it adds some light and to it. So I think that's a good presence to have that in. You know, did a great job with the planters and the permanent planters and the potted plants there. You start to have those parks, right? So you got a little bit of green, you got the park cars, you got the nice awnings that are in good condition, storefronts are clean. So you have those parks, so you're starting to get that successor space. Sidewalks are in good condition. As you go down, you have the fire department on one side. Of course, the steakhouse is one of the first things you see, and one of your biggest draws, obviously. The one thing we talk about parking on that side of the street, it's fairly orderly. I mean, you have the angled parking and you have the drive lane. That's about it. It's fairly simple. They're fairly well striped for the most part. On the right side, it's just a hodgepodge. So a lot of times you see parallel parking there. Sometimes you have the angled parking that's striped. That's supposedly private for the fire station.
Nobody can park there where the fire station.
Yes, that's private. It's private for the fire station. There's angled a little bit further down with the stripe. And actually, those are striped, I think. So it gets kind of confusing on that side. And I think it gets confusing for locals and for visitors. And I know on a big night, Friday night or whatever, all that's full of people going every direction. So I know that that's one of the Main Street's priorities of how to formalize some of that. And one of the biggest differences, and I think you have, for the most part, the same amount of space on both sides of the median. But this is much more orderly. There's one type of parking. It's very clean. Whereas this side, it's kind of a hodgepodge. And some of that may just be people's actions. And I don't know if the parallel parking was actually.
Well, we did some very rudimentary, like, car counting out here one night when the town was packed and had 3 events. And we had, starting at that intersection over here, right across the street and all that green space, there were 72 cars parked there. Because we were trying to figure out, would it make sense to angle parking starting at that corner coming all the way down the street? And, once again, you get into those questions of what do you take away and what makes sense to replace. But there were 70-some cars parked just over there.
I've been here on some big nights.
I know.
So just to point that out, that it is kind of a hodgepodge on this side. Again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, and I'm not telling you things y'all don't already know, but this is coming from outsiders too. So it just kind of adds to your ammunition as locals. If you're going to the city or whoever, it's not just y'all complaining about it, it's outsiders as well. We see the same thing. So, and part of the problem in the downtown as a whole is just the lack of striping around town. It's all faded, you can't really see it anymore. So I think just freshening that up, and I would recommend you using white paint instead of yellow. It's just a lot more attractive and shows up a lot better. But just restriping, I think, would make a huge difference in the entire downtown area. And then signage, if this is no parking, or if it's private parking, others, they want to have some private parking next to the fire station for, if there is a call, they have somewhere to go. This needs signage and tell people where's public parking, where's private parking, things like that. And there may be some signs there, but something if that's not doing the trick, you're going to have to add more to it to get people's attention. Then you got a good shot of the downtown there. One after you got your skyscraper. This is nice seeing all one-story buildings in the one. But you have if you don't have a lot of this, but any abandoned or empty poles or signs or things like that, if those can start to come down, that's not going to make a huge difference because it's one. But over time, those little bitty things can make a big difference if they're not being used. A lot of stuff going on downtown. It's great to have the post office, have something that's activity generator, still having that downtown. A lot of cities have thrown those out on the highway, but to keep that downtown is great, in my opinion. You have a lot of, I'll put this, I think at the end, a lot of, I think, loyal businesses that have been here for a very long time. Employer Insurance, I know Mr. Sledge, you've been here for a very long time in your business. So yeah, that's a huge asset to have local businesses that have been here for a very long time and have stuck to you through the obviously the go-in, I'll talk about all the tourism-related things here in a little bit, but a lot of good, active businesses downtown. Again, you can kind of see the lack of striping and things like that there. You see here, this shot compared to the one I showed you about in front of the fire station, it's just a completely different experience, right? It's very orderly, clean. I mentioned that earlier. Here's a shot that actually illustrates it. The mural, I love the mural. That's something you notice as soon as you come in to Main Street. It's something that stands out. I love those type of things. You have nice wide sidewalks. The balconies add a lot of activity as well. These sidewalks are in pretty good condition. I put this in here. I'm going to kind of give you some ideas here in a little while, but you have nice, really wide sidewalks. You have a lot of space that you can use to do different things, which is great. And a lot of cities don't have that luxury to have that much space to work with. This side, you start to see some of the issues there, especially if you're dealing with somebody with a walker or a stroller or a wheelchair. They have a lot of time, a very difficult time navigating those type of things. And you have a lot of that in the downtown area. Here's a great example of the three parts I was talking about. I mean, just a simple gesture like that, which isn't anything major, but that makes a huge difference to show a little life, especially when I assume one of your issues is you have a lot of traffic at the steakhouse. How do you get them to walk down the street? And I think things like this let them see, hey, there's something going on. If you have to walk past a couple of vacant storefronts, sometimes that makes them stop and turn around. But they can see things like this down the street, they'll at least go check it out. That helps draw people down. So that's a good gesture there. And if that were kind of replicated down the street, that might help get people's attention. You start seeing some of this hodgepodge.
We moved them, they're gone.
Gone, all right. Oh, we talk about them. You didn't mention your success story. That's not your greatest success story.
You know what? That was I personally walked by them for 5 years and one day went, why are these things here?
Yeah. So you start to see some of the issues
Next door now.
which I know you guys know. So just pointing out these outsiders. We have more pictures on it. And then another trend, I'm going to point out here in a second, you have a lot of different things going on in your downtown area. I mean, the stretch of sidewalk down by the antique shop looks completely different than the section in the middle. It looks completely different than this right here. Not necessarily a good or bad thing, it's just there's not a lot of consistency there. I like having the green there. So just to point that out, there's a lot of different things going on. Vacant lots, if there's any way to clean those out, that's a huge undertaking, probably private property, but at least the wall, that looks nice as you got a little bit of rubble and things. Yeah. Situations like that, very difficult for handicap accessibility and things like that.
How do you get those out of the asphalt? Do you just cut them down, get some kind of special saw?
The posts?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times you just have to cut them out at the ground.
Does anybody know what used to hang on those signs? Because some of them look very old, like they used to have. I'm just curious if anybody knows what was actually
Well,
what was.
it used to, when I was with teenagers, in front of that store, where am I?
You're in front of John Calvin's law firm right there.
Okay, well, back up, on the other side of the bank, along that part, the people that owned the store, the two guys used to throw washers, and there were holes out there. Y'all remember that? Yeah. And so there were holes for the washers, but that was a sign for the barber shop, maybe.
That strip right there between the sidewalk and the road could have been rendered.
Yeah. Yeah, we have this.
There's no other purpose, right?
Well, that's, down here you have the permanent planters. Somewhere else you have the monkey grass and the crepe myrtles. Here you just have kind of some rubble. So there's a lot of opportunities there. And again, if I like these posts of the old sign, if they have some sort of historical significance, don't cut them down. I'm just saying if they were, done in the 80s or something and they're just empty, that's a little bit different. So, but that's something that you guys will know that I don't know as an outsider. So some other shots here, just the infrastructure issues, which y'all are very familiar with. Just a little touch of the American flag makes a huge difference. And that pops out and gets people's attention. I hate that this one, I don't know what reason it was filled in with concrete, but it's going to be really tough to deal with now. Weather landscaping and maintenance and things like that are a lot of issues, but I hate that it's filled in because it's going to be really tough to do something.
Why did that get filled in?
That concrete thing, about the time I came up here, they had already done that, and I said, what in the world is that gonna be? And our maintenance man said, we're gonna move the sign that was at our downtown branch in Batesville that burned. And I said, I don't want that sign here. And thank goodness they had formed the Historical Society. So I called our main bank and said, you can't put the sign up.
Do you remember there was a culvert sticking up out of there?
Oh, yeah, they were gonna put
A
that.
vertical culvert.
It's still there, they just cut it
So
off.
it's never a planter, it's still a sign.
It was a planter originally, but.
So is it possible to jackhammer that out, or does it go all the way down?
No, it's there. But they're supposed to have put us a really nice, bronze flagpole with a flag on it. And it just never got done.
When you make do some potted plants or something on top of it that you wouldn't really notice.
I have done that.
Okay.
I've done that,
I know
Well, Louise is trying to fix it up.
yeah. I'm gonna try something else for the summer and see, because people put trash,
Oh,
beer bottles.
The trash gets a permanent
I
trash.
find beer bottles back in the back all the time.
So now let's start running through some of your main businesses. Obviously, this isn't an inventory of every business you have. Don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but just some of the highlights. Obviously, the steakhouse is a huge draw. I have a lot of family in DeSoto County, and they drive down regularly to eat at the steakhouse. Huge draw there. I do think we're talking about priorities, and y'all will know this better as locals, but as an outsider's opinion, I would think the area here would be a priority as far as fixing the accessibility issues and things like that.
And just, I'll interrupt once again, to say that the few planners that were here last year, they were all concerned about that spot primarily, that, even though it's not as awful looking as what's north, because they said if you're going to start, you got to start where your density is, where your people gather.
Well, that's your visibility right
And,
there.
you know,
A lot
that's
of people
sort of
don't make
like-
it all the way down that end.
So that is a very big concern, that spot.
Obviously, when you see grill, and for you guys to be as small as you are and have the number of restaurants that not only serve this community but the region is incredible. I don't know another community that I can compare you to with that. It's just incredible how you've been able to do it, but it's incredible. You should be proud of that. I've used this as an example before because basically it's an empty building, so somebody's fixed it up enough to be able to host events. And obviously, most people just focus on getting a business in there, but they're using it as an entertainment space, which is a great use of a vacant, quote unquote vacant building. So I use that as an example a lot. I think there's something going on there tonight. A little space there. Como Inn, I know that our group, as well as the City Development Authority and others like Main Street, if we're in this area at all, we stay at the Como Inn because it's something unique. It's very nice on the inside. It's just something different. I mean, anybody can go to Batesville or to South End somewhere stay at a Holiday Inn, but this is something, a unique experience. And I know a lot of our groups that we work with, if we're anywhere in this area, we come out of our way to stay here. And these are some things that you can't find this just anywhere. So you should be very proud of things like this and hope to spin off. I know you used to have some more bed and breakfast. I don't know if you, I'd heard one closed and all this, but anyway, very unique.
Still do.
Still do, okay, good.
A wonderful one.
Okay, so I heard one closed, but I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, so something to be proud of, just a unique lodging experience. And if you're trying to do tourism, a lot of communities are trying to do that with the Blues Trail and all that, but there's nowhere for people to eat, there's nowhere for people to stay, there's nowhere for people to spend money. So it's like, it's hard to do tourism if there's not anything. You all
You ought to check out the Como Courtyard.
I've seen it from the Como Inn, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
It's
I've looked at some aerial
like
imagery of
something
it.
in Europe.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
I've seen the picture, I've never seen it in person. This is fantastic. And we know Water Valley, the BTC grocery in Water Valley is used as an example a lot, but there's a very small scale of that fits the scale of Como, and a very extremely unique experience there that I think people will drive, maybe not drive all over the shop, but people will swing through there to see it, just because it feels like you're stepping back in time, and it's very good. He's added a lot of merchandise since the last time I was here, so that's something to be proud of as well, something that's unique. Great job with the, I don't know what this looked like before, but great job with the storefront there, just the whole treatment of that building. Very attractive, it stands out immediately with the color and all that. Also have a bank downtown, sorry for the terrible picture, but out of 500 pictures of Como, I didn't have a good one of the bank, so sorry. But having that presence of an institution like a bank like that, having that downtown is huge. I know they've been very supportive apparently of your efforts here. The Main Street Government, what you've done with this place is incredible, and the quality of the artwork that I've seen in my 3 or 4 times up here is incredible. So great job with that. Another way to get some tourists in here and some visitors to check out what you have. Sometimes we overcomplicate things. Sometimes we spend, we spent almost 2 years trying to do wayfinding signage, and we forget how simple it can be sometimes. And maybe this wouldn't fit the scale of Starkville, but this fits Como. That's something unique.
And I'll just say that Bob Kent painted those for us as well with chalkboard paint. Thank you, Bob.
So it's a great example of how simplicity sometimes is the best way to go. We talked a little bit about this alley on one of my kind of site visit trips for another project, and those issues with the building and all that, which is tough to deal with. But just some ideas of how to.
What can we do with that, Jeremy?
Karen, I'm glad you asked.
Because I wasn't going to ask. I mean, really.
Now, there are some safety issues. There's a lot of cool things you can do with alleys to make them used, and I'll give you a couple of examples. If there are some safety concerns with the building, that may not be possible yet, but I'm going to give you something you can do that would be a lot more attractive than
They really didn't even want people walking in the alley, because see, back at the back of that building, well, I can show you now.
Louise has been waiting for that wall to fall into her office for
Yeah,
several years.
back in here, it's like another part was added on, and it was just a huge crack, and that wall just kept coming out and coming out, and he would go in there and do something to pull it back in, and then it would pull out again. The last time it looks like it's held, but see, the beer trucks would pull in there and hide their motors, and that's what they were scared of, that it's going to make that whole wall fall.
So you really don't want, what I'm not showing you that work for if you're really trying to keep people out, people walk around that, I guess.
Oh, they walk through it all the time.
Yeah. But something's a little more attractive than that, and even in the meantime, can somebody just go screw that board up? Straight to something.
We'll get on that tomorrow.
So alley, there's some neat things the other community's done. Just
So what can we do with it?
Well,
Yeah, okay, those
here we
things.
are. Here's some examples. So the bollards, instead of this, you can use these little bollards which are just kind of mounted to the ground. And actually the breakaway, so if a fire truck or emergency something had to get through the alley, they just hit them and they fall over. Some of them can actually hinge at the bottom, so you pull the pin out or something that just lays over if you need to service truck or something through there. Some would be a lot cleaner and neater than the old construction thing there. Here's to be able to, I know you're not to this point yet to be able to use the alley until you secure that building. Here's just some simple treatments of alleys. And I'm going to talk a lot about West Street, right? The back street.
Back east, yeah.
They'll call it Back Street? I've always heard people call it Back Street here, but I looked on the map, it's West Street.
It used to be.
Frank Ward.
I'm going to talk a lot about that for extra parking. So if you have people parking back there, they need a way to get up to Main Street. So if that alley's able to use it to cut through at some point, just some simple treatments. Now I need a better picture of this because this really does not do it justice at all. And I'm trying to find a before picture. This is in Columbus, and it was just a nasty alley that was used for the stormwater that ran through there in like a gutter. And they took that and cleaned it up and put a pipe here with a grate on the top, a lot of landscaping and pots, and that cuts through to a parking lot in the back. Again, it's trash days. One of the best days for this picture. But it's a really good example of a few simple things can make a really tight alley kind of attractive and be a nice cut for you to the backside of downtown. Then also people use them for outdoor seating and things like that, even though it's a really tiny space. So there's a few things. I think the bollards might be a good approach just to clean that up. Even if you do have to block it up, you only need 2 or 3 on each end. I wouldn't think they'd be very expensive at all. Something like that, and then over time, if you secure that building, start to use that alley for a pedestrian thoroughfare. The character of y'all's downtown reminded me a lot of Carrollton, Mississippi. Y'all been to Carrollton? Really small town, outside of Greenwood-ish. Even the buildings are kind of similar architecture, but they've done a lot there. That was one of the first cities that I worked in when I started doing this job years ago, 5 years ago. I felt like I was in Mayberry, and that's kind of what I felt like here. So it reminded me a lot. You see, you can be small and rural and still have a lot of character. I know you already have a lot of it. And you start to pay attention to how the buildings are. You know, they've got these, this is the Carroll County Market, little restaurant and business there. Banners and little hanging signs for the coffee shop. It's just a good example of, you know, it doesn't have to be big brick, formal planter. It's something that fits that small rural character that adds a lot to the experience of visitors. Carrollton reminded me a lot of you guys. So some of you may want to go visit there in Canada. I was talking about all the different types of sidewalks you have. You know, from one end to the other, you have just big wide sidewalk where really nothing going on. You have a sidewalk with green space. You have a sidewalk with permanent planters. And then you have the planters at the other end too. So you don't necessarily have to standardize it. I mean, it doesn't have to be all the same. But you have some opportunities to create, as you do redo sidewalks, if you're all going to start, maybe that's a goal at least, to redo some of these stretches, how do you want them to look? You have a lot, if you're redoing them, you have, possibilities are endless. So here are some different examples. You have kind of solid, a lot of brick with the concrete banding. You have concrete with the brick banding. This is stone, which I don't think fits Como, but I was just showing you all that there's tons of possibilities. This is very similar to what you have now with the sidewalk there, and then they actually have brick along here for the trees. That way the roots have things, maybe palm trees don't necessarily have roots, but roots have room to grow and things like that with the brick. So there's a lot of different possibilities, and I think that might be something that Mainstreet Alliance needs to think about is, what do we want this to look like? You don't necessarily have to just put solid concrete. There's a lot of different things you can do. So give some thought to that. Also, you can think about, since you do have that much space to work with, maybe some cities will come up with, I'm not saying to put actually into code and things like that, but just some ideas of zones. And like this place, you know, this zone may be kind of for the property owner or the business owner to do what they want to do with potted plants or merchandise for the antique store you spill out on the sidewalks. Maybe it's outdoor seating for the restaurants. They have some space that they can do what they want to. You have a major, or the main kind of thoroughfare, the lane, travel lane for pedestrians to go through. And maybe this outer zone is for the plants, for the planters, or benches, or things like that. So you can start to figure out, okay, from this, maybe 6, 7 feet in, here's the different things you can do. Then close to the building, here's the different things you can do. And some of these businesses may do it voluntarily. But you start educating people and have some uniformity to it. So everybody's kind of working on that same idea. Street trees, you know, again, you have a lot of room to be able to get those trees away from the buildings enough to where they can grow and not be growing into the wall itself. Right now, you have a few, just the crepe myrtles, and a lot of communities love their crepe myrtles. Not against crepe myrtles, but they're not a great street tree because when they max out in height, they cover up the buildings.
Exactly.
They don't get tall enough. They're not big enough. They don't get tall enough to get above the buildings or above the storefronts. So we want to recommend different species that will actually grow up. You see how the canopy of those trees are actually above the storefronts. And those are not huge trees, but they get up tall enough, especially if they're mature, I think they're tall enough to where they provide a lot of shade. In our hot Mississippi summers, when they leave it open on the storefronts, and here's some really large oak trees and things like that. They're not growing in a lot of space. They're not tearing up the sidewalk and all that, but they're up tall enough where you can see the storefronts and all that. So for street trees, we recommend some other species other than crepe myrtles and things like that. So now we're going to jump back to West Street and talk about that. Obviously, the 18-wheeler tractor storage there is not ideal, especially at the kind of the beginning of that street. The pallets all stacked up. That's just not and we're going to treat this as a back street. I know it's behind the buildings and all that, but it can be orderly and it doesn't have to be unattractive just because it's a back street. Also, the police presence there is nice. Have some maintenance things there. Back street ballroom. You know, the cut throughs here, there's a lot of, you don't have a clean edge to know where's the street, where's the parking or whatever else. The backs of the buildings are not necessarily the most attractive things in the world. Maybe the dumpsters should be screened. Maybe this can be cleaned up. I'm going to give you an example of another community that had this exact same issue. I'll show you how they handled it. And again, we talked about the employee parking earlier. And I'm going to show you an aerial view of this in a little bit. Tremendous opportunity for employees to park in the backs of these buildings. If it's cleaned up, maybe some lighting. There's probably a problem with that. If I don't feel safe back there, I'm sure it's extremely dark. It's not well maintained. So it's not very enticing for people to park back there. So it's kind of chicken or the egg. You need people to start using it before it's worth cleaning it up. But it needs cleaned up before people are willing to use it. So it's that back and forth, there's the balance there. And some of it comes to education, of educating the business owners on why it's important for their employees to park in the back, especially the restaurants that employ a lot of people. Why it's important for the customers to be on the front. You know, this phase, then I don't know what's going on with it. Maybe some opportunities for some secondary parking or maybe park or something. Not sure what's going on there. Of course, this was before you actually had the park. So when we first did this, that wasn't happening. Some things are in decent shape. It looks like people are kind of parking there already. I'm extremely impressed that the post office is as well maintained as it is. Usually when we see those in these type areas, there's the mail bins and carts are stuck everywhere. They do a good job of keeping it fairly clean. You can tell which businesses regularly use the back doors and which ones don't. You know, it's a lot of just basic infrastructure type things that need to be happening there. And on the back side of the alley, we were talking about that. A lot of vacant lots. A little bit overgrown there, not terrible. We think there's tremendous potential with this. It's old gin.
It's a lumberyard.
Yeah, I didn't think it was big enough for gin.
Jeremy, everybody that's come to town has said, "Oh, that's the most fantastic building."
Well, now I also look at the aerial. It's a big, like a,
I
has a
know.
courtyard in the middle.
It does.
It's good. That's a big courtyard. But that, I think there's a lot of potential with that. You know, maybe there's a way to screen that and keep that a little better maintained. But church, you know, it's church, right? Yeah. Church in the back there. And this was when it was under construction. But man, that park was full when I got here about 5 o'clock. And you said it just opened this week?
It's just Saturday. That's
Saturday.
opening.
So a great job with that. Huge success of a project. I didn't have an after picture because it was still under construction. But it's a great job with that. Should be proud of that. So this kind of in general, the downtown summary. Formal, this is, I'm going to talk about some opportunities for using back street or West Street as some accessory parking, whether it's parallel on the street or some of those for some smaller lots for employees, things like that. But even on Main Street, using striping, maybe some repaving, things like that will make a huge difference. Educate the employees, employers about employee parking. Obviously, accessibility issue. These things you know at this point in time as outsiders. One big positive too, I failed to mention in the photographs, the fact that y'all have tons of utility lines everywhere is great. And that's something y'all need to be proud of, that you don't have to deal with that. That's something that's almost impossible to deal with as well. So as we look at Main Street, kind of as an aerial shot, and I think you have the same amount of space as you go on this side, maybe do the angled parking, and not lose a lot of green space and all that, because a lot of it's being, for the most part, used anyway. To really formalize that east side, you have a lot of space for accessory lots and things like that, for even if it's just the employees to park there, not the public. But I think on either side of West Street, there may be some opportunities for parallel parking there, just as on those big nights when it's full, people can go back there. That lot there could be a park or some extra parking, things like that. And I love that little vacant lot right smack dab in the middle. It's right next to the steakhouse. Not sure what the story with that is, but that'd be a great little pocket park there for people to use while they're waiting on the restaurants and all that. Just to clean, even if it's just a cleanup area for now, but that's a lot of potential with that site. West Street improvements. Those Water Valley, Mississippi, I know y'all worked with Mickey a little bit and with him. Here's a project they did. after the first impressions report a few years ago. I think they won a Main Street award for this. They have the same issue. You see their main downtown area, mainly just that one side of the street. This is, Humor is actually Fred's, but it's their grocery store. It gets a lot of traffic. But you can see that's the back of the buildings. So the backs of their buildings are extremely visible to people every day. So they have their main drag, little side streets, and then their issue was, this street, how do you improve the looks of the property? So when we did our visit, this is kind of what that area looked like. It was overgrown, it was just not attractive, and again, it's extremely visible to people every day. So I don't know the full story. Jeannie probably knows more of the story than I do. Got a group of volunteers, and they actually did the ACLP project that you're doing.
They did. And they had like 45 volunteers.
Yeah, the volunteers that got there. And here it is today. It's light colors. It's very clean, very much cleaned up. The physical story, like signage on that side, and things like that cleaned up. So volunteers got out there and did a lot of that. And a lot of it was educating the business owners on what to do and the importance of doing that. And this is in another community, but just the back of a store. I mean, they can be, you still got the trash cans and things like that, but it can be a clean looking store owning and things like that, even though it's the back of the building. And here's your store. Thinking about lighting, repaving, maybe starting some parking, things like that, even signage, if it is public parking, if it's private parking, whatever. So different things to improve that. I know that's one of your priorities. Anybody have any questions about that?
We're just kind of a quick, brief, fun moment. Jeremy?
Bob and Alice Kid.
Like just left.
Mr. Hall, did you pull the last, did you put your name in here?
Martha Francisco.
I'll miss that.
All right.
Congrats, everybody. All right, these things I'm going to go through really quickly. The downtown and the entrances were the really intensive part. We had a lot of good discussion that went with that, so we'll go through this quickly. Really, the housing was just talking about the great housing stock you have and historic homes, the great stock of historic homes, which you know, but now it really stands out. Even, obviously on the main drag on Oak Avenue, and even in those neighborhoods across the street here, beautiful, beautiful homes. We talk about big opportunities for some driving tours, things like that, you're working on. Then obviously you have some areas of town that maybe need a little bit more work, a little more attention. Some of these are very close to the backside here. This speaks to the small rural community. This is right in the middle of these neighborhoods over here. There's like, goodness gracious, right in the middle of town, it's full of here.
That's our next food business, Jeremy. We're going to put a Venison Beach shop.
That's right.
It's like chocolate on most drinks.
But I didn't see a lot of newer homes, didn't see a lot of that. Obviously, you don't have a lot of multi-story buildings they'll do downtown housing, really, but you have a lot of great houses around here. The biggest selling point, I think, for housing is that you do have that small town charm and character and feeling, but you're close to Batesville, Memphis, DeSoto County, you're close to everything. So that's great. You guys know that because you live here, but as you're selling this to others. Infrastructure, in small towns like this, sidewalks aren't as important as far as in the outer areas of town because you don't have a lot of traffic. People can walk on the streets and be fairly safe. But as you grow and as time progresses, you need to think about having sidewalks that are connecting at least the main corridors of town, improving the ones downtown. Some of the streets weren't in the best condition. Obviously, we already talked about downtown. You do have a lot of pedestrian activity that I saw in town, from younger children, school-age kids, up to elderly. So you have a lot of people trying to walk around. And the fact that you can still do that is fantastic. Just maintenance as far as the edge of the grass there. Schools, the fact that a lot of your towns your size have lost their schools. They're no longer even located in their cities. So the fact that you still have one is great. Even from the good entrance there, pretty clean. You can tell that they're older buildings showing signs of age. I'm sure that's a continual battle trying to keep up with all that type of stuff. But overall, the grounds were were in good condition. You know, maybe painting the windows, things like that, window trim will make a big difference. But for the most part, in good condition. Obviously, you had a lot of churches, but just kind of the big landmark in there on the corner. You had some of the more historic ones scattered around downtown. A lot of churches of different scales. You know, this one had the sign. I don't know if it's actually in use or not.
Well, there's a church, yeah.
It's not that building. Okay, it's not. I couldn't tell if it's that building because that crosses down.
School.
So different size churches, things like they have a lot of them, which you expect in small towns in Mississippi. Tourism, obviously, your blues, history there. Famous people that are from here, famous musicians that are still here. Things like that. Historic homes with driving tours and things like that. Obviously, you're a food destination that we talked about at the very beginning, which is incredible. You've got places for people to stay. So as far as your tourism, I think you guys know this, but the hard part is trying to organize it all and sell it to outsiders. And that's what's hard, is how you tell this story to other people. Because you guys aren't just doing just the blues or just food or something else. You have a lot of different things. So how do you tell a unified story about all these things? And that's tough. So blues history, I already mentioned the markers and the musicians that you have here. But you know, the work here from Ms. Sharon is just to have that in your town is incredible. And that's just being more and more important as some of these musicians pass away in the coming years. So that's going to be more and more impressive as time goes on. Work on the blues part, which will be a big attraction there. The food, you're really, when I first started coming to Como and coming to the steakhouse, it was pretty much just the one or two restaurants, and that was it. There's nothing for you to do while you're waiting or after you got finished. But now, you've got the art gallery, you've got a few retail stores. You have a lot more going on that are kind of those spin-off businesses than you did even, I don't know, 6 years ago, or I don't know what it was, but when I first started coming in here. So, seeing a lot of growth in that, which is impressive. And I think you can keep that going now, so that's great. So just the general observations. Obviously, you're a quaint small town, put Mayberry in parentheses. I mean, that's what makes you unique, especially in this region, and that you have a functioning downtown and things like that. Food destination, which is unheard of for a town your size. You do have a growing retail base. It's small local stores, but like I said, in the past few years, you've seen a few more and more added, which is great. Your art space, which is something that draws a lot of people, especially around Mississippi. They want to see unique Mississippi art. I think the steakhouse does a great job of showing the photographs of the cows and all that, but I think that cattle history is kind of unique to Mississippi because usually we see the cotton and corn and things like that. The cattle is something that's a little bit different. I know we have a lot of dairies and things like that, but that's something that people want to hear the stories about. You have great downtown bones, and when I say that, a lot of cities your size don't have the buildings anymore, or they never have them. So the fact that you have a little strip of downtown buildings is unique and something that you can deal with. And you know, these two things, the fact that you haven't seen a lot of growth obviously is a challenge because you need the tax base and things like that. It's also a huge positive because you're not trying to go back and fix it. And the fact that your downtown is still the heart and the commercial hub of your town is extremely unique. So a lot of towns still have their downtowns, but they're just kind of a side note. And they're trying to bring them back. So that's huge. The challenges, obviously managing future growth when you don't have the resources as far as money and as far as staffing to handle the zoning and everything else. That's going to be tough. Lack of funding and just resources to do. Y'all know what the infrastructure needs are. It's just tough to pay for them sometimes. So dealing with that. You have a lot of great ideas, but having the resources to actually do them are going to be tough. But you have a lot of energy and a lot of volunteers to be able to do that. You're not scared to do the work yourself, which is very impressive. Solving the downtown parking issues, managing those impressions on the corridors. It's not bad now, but stay on top of that stuff. And one thing is changing the culture of people here. Like the gentleman was mentioning earlier, if you want to grow or you're a tourism town, so that means you get a lot of outsiders in here. And you guys, I think, are open to that and are friendly and welcoming to people coming in. A lot of people in town may not have that same opinion. They don't want people coming in from outside and don't want to do these extra things to cater to that. So changing that culture to more of a tourism and outsider-friendly mindset may be tough for some people in the population. So that's a challenge when you're making that switch. Overall, we always ask people, what are the biggest things you're going to remember when you leave? Obviously, the dining destinations downtown, the school and library, all that kind of thing stood out to them. And my final piece of advice, you have a lot of things you want to do, and a lot of things that are very tough to do because of the cost or just the time and the resources. Stick to it, do it step by step. You already have a great success story with this space, with the park. You made a lot of progress on the old City Hall building. It's easy to get burnt out when it's the same people doing all the work. And I know this is a fairly small group in this room that's probably doing all the work, but how do you eat elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. So stick to that. Just
you drink a lot of alcohol between.
Drink a lot of alcohol. So I'll put this transition here really quickly. This last thing, so stick with me for 1 minute. This is not a very attractive street. This doesn't look much disordered. Some of your stretches downtown. So how do you improve it? And a lot of times I show the after picture. You're like, oh, we'll never be able to do that. That's too much money, too much whatever. They have a lot of excuses, but this is an example of how you can, step by step, over time, get to that overall vision that you want to do. This is an example of a downtown sidewalk. This applies to everything you're trying to do, whether it's the park or anything. So maybe the first year, this community, they're able to add some potted plants. Maybe that was a business owner, maybe it was a city, maybe it was a volunteer group. They did that the first year, that's great. Makes a big difference. Maybe they got the property owner just to paint a little bit to break up that big blank wall, maybe just a little bit of highlight paint there to add some contrast. So then it's starting to add a little bit. Now the property owner started to add some awnings just to kind of create that overhead canopy like we talked about, and add a little bit of color on those businesses. Then the arts group got to add a mural one year. They got a grant from the Arts Commission. Maybe they had the volunteers at the high school paint it themselves. So now this little dingy side street has become an attraction so you want to come see the artwork and the mural and whatever else. They got $400 donated, they got to buy a bench. Maybe they got 1 bench, maybe they got 4 benches. That's what they did that year. Then the city's able to step up, maybe they save some money, maybe they got a grant, whatever. They're able to fix the sidewalks and do it the way they wanted to do it. Then maybe they had a group raising money to sell trees, like memorial trees like they're doing the bricks. They were able to add that 1 year. Yeah, this may be 10 years later, who knows? Then they're able to get some decorative street signs, things like street lights and some banners. So over time, whether that took 2 years or 10 years or 20 years, they're able to do it step by step over time. It doesn't have, you're not going to go from that to that. Oh, that go through all the way. Man, the dramatic ending. You're not going to go from that before picture to the after overnight. You're going to have to do it step by step and slowly over time. So don't get discouraged as you go through this and it seems like it's too big of a mountain to climb. You'll get there eventually. You've already shown success in a lot of these areas of what you're doing. It's just been a year. So that's my final bit of advice for you. It's been a long night. Appreciate you hanging with me. Anybody have any questions about any of that?
Jeremy, I think one of the greatest challenges when I moved here was, there's always the public and the private ownership. And, when you start dealing with town leaders and all that, and this happens in every community, you hear a lot of the town will do this, the town will do that. But I have found equally that you either have motivated private property owners as well as public, officials. And to me, it seems equally sort of stalled. And I don't have to say it, there's a lot of properties you showed that they're private properties.
Right.
And so, I think Main Street maybe can do some little incentive things like have a contest, like award money, or a weekend trip to somewhere for the coolest improvement. But my question is, how do you incentivize private property owners? And I would just say, this is one of our greatest private property owners, Sledge, who has done a tremendous amount, on his own. He doesn't have to do. I'm not saying that because he's sitting here, but.
Well, it's tough. Private property issues is in every town and stuff. And you're right. A lot of people sit around and blame the city. They're waiting for the city to do something. Then it's like, well, why don't you do it?
Right.
On that.
The private side can do a ton.
Now, like Knox Ross, the quote I said at the very beginning, they took this, and they're a really small town. They're smaller. They don't have the size downtown y'all do. They took the stance that the city's going to lead by example. So they painted all their buildings. They kept it all maintained and mowed. So they led by example, which led to a I think almost every building in their downtown, which gets small, had been repainted since, and they considered it. A couple years ago, there was one remaining, I'm sure it's done by now. So they led by example, and everybody else, once they saw the city doing it, they stepped up. Vice versa. I think if you can get, what y'all are doing here, which is the one building y'all have control over. I know a lot of the storefront stuff was done before you took over, but you've maintained it, you've probably improved it even more than when it was a restaurant. So you have control over this business, or this building, and you're leading by example. If you get a couple other property owners to step up, put a fresh coat of paint on it. You got the law office down this way that's done a great job with that. Get a few people to start improving theirs, then it becomes a shame game of everybody around because their business looks even worse because the one next door to them looks so good. So it's that kind of thing too. And then like with the business that's, or the building that's falling down, you might can go more of a direct route if it is a public safety issue and go through kind of the process of declaring it in minutes and things like that. That's a long drawn out process too. So it's that carrot to the stick, lead by example. If you can get a solid, I think, facade grant program as being a goal, that's one incentive because it's actually helping fund it. Leading by example, or the city actually going through kind of the more legal process. I mean, those are kind of three different angles to come at that.
I think one of our biggest objectives, and you and I talked about this before, is getting the business owners involved. It's sad to see tonight there's not one city official here. There's several of the larger businesses that are not involved at all. It's almost like we got our deal, we just gonna do what we're gonna do. It's hard to get them involved.
And it's that same, that is frustrating to see all over too. But it's the same thing you said, that people are sitting around waiting on the city to do something, and y'all can't get caught up in that either. Just focusing everything on, why won't these people do something? And y'all start spinning your wheels waiting on that. That's being tough enough to crack. Focus on things you do have control over. Get some results, and then maybe they'll eventually start to jump on board. If not, you're just going to keep doing what you're doing and being successful without it. You just leave them behind. But don't y'all get so caught up into what people won't do and focus on people that won't do things. You have a room full of people that are willing to do something. So really focus on that and get stuff done that you want to get done. And then point my loss, then it'll come back to you. Yes, sir.
As far as the sign, the fire department has a little machine that you can put a can of paint in that you can roll it and paint the stripes, and we can get that done pretty easy. The sidewalk out here and the strip of asphalt, we have a design. I've got two buildings here. I realize the city doesn't have the money, but you're not talking about a whole lot of money. You're not talking about a lot to do. I'd be willing to do some of that, but then there's a vacant building on either side of me. I don't know who's got jurisdiction on the sidewalk, or it might even be you could get a grant or get donations to do some of it, but somebody's got to take the lead to kind of get permission to do it.
And I'll just tell you, last fall, the town, during one of the board meetings, asked us specifically to start looking at how to approach the sidewalk design. And they, I know that we're all dancing around the tourism money, and, that was part of that. And, Dr. Moore looked directly at me and said, Karen, can you and this group help us figure out? Because what we got into was, we said, we need to fix some sidewalks. And so then, it was brought up in a meeting, well, which ones? And which ones do you start with? And how do you fix them? And are there ADA or disability standards? And all of these things. And so when we got some of these planners walking around, so like you're saying, they said, this is nothing more, a lot of these spaces, than somebody that came along and dumped a bunch of asphalt to cover up whatever, and it wouldn't take much. And so our proposal to the city after this meeting, and in response to that question, is under design, that almost everybody in this community has said, please let's start. If we take 2 of our worst patches this year, or we do some work on the steakhouse and the worst section, then that would be our recommendation, that some of that money be used for these sidewalks and work with some of these guys that do this all over in this town.
Priority is a big thing. Like you keep mentioning.
Right.
You can't do it all.
You can't do it all, and you can't limit resources.
The biggest thing for your body.
Right.
Well, that's what I thought was so good about that last little bit you showed, was how you can start off small and each little step and what a difference it makes.
And it doesn't cost money to